Talking funds, but this time we go to education. The Nigeria Education Loan Fund said its total disbursement for student loans covering school fees and upkeep stands at 32.8 billion naira as of 3rd of February 2025. In a statement signed by its management, NELFUND said it has received a total of 364,042 student loan applications since the inception and has approved 192,906 applications. The fund says it has disbursed over 20 billion naira for institutional fees as of 3rd February. It added that it has disbursed over 12 billion naira's upkeep to 169,114 students. Apart from school fee payments, beneficiaries have the option to receive a monthly stipend of 20,000 naira in addition to their loans. Well, Managing Director of the Nigeria Education Loan Fund, Akintunde Sawyer, joins me on the news at 1 this afternoon. Now, walk us through, thank you very much for coming, by the way.
Pleasure, Theophilus.
All right,
thanks for having me.
Walk us through the disbursement process. Now, many people, in as much as they know about the NELFUND, but are not understanding of its processes of disbursing funds to school. Some people believe they get the funds themselves and pay the school fees.
Right, okay, so it's a really good question and a good place to start because that is really where the questions are. Essentially, there is obviously an application process that takes us through to the point where we start talking or doing disbursement.
Okay.
The disbursement process starts with us sending a list to the schools to say the following individuals have applied for loans with NELFUND. Are they your students? Are they in the departments that they say they're in? Do all their credentials check out? So essentially, once the school gets that information from us, they come back to us and confirm whether those students are indeed theirs and are indeed in the session that they say they are. The other thing they confirm to us is the cost of the course itself, because every course has a different fee level, and this is a loan, remember. Once they revert and come back to us in writing, confirming that the students that we've presented to them are indeed their students, what we then do is start a process of audit. We go through an internal audit process, we cross-check amounts, individuals, fees, all those sorts of things to make sure that we're giving the funds to the right school, for the right student. And then there's a second half to the disbursement process, and you mentioned upkeep or pocket money, if you like. We go through a process of ensuring that the account numbers we have, because we disperse that directly to the students as opposed to the other one where we give it to the institution. We go and check that the BVN is accurate, the name of the student on their bank account correlates or corresponds with the student name in the institution. Once we confirm that and a few other security checks that we carry out in the background, we're then able to disperse directly to students. And remember, the disbursement process for institutions is once a year. The disbursement process for individuals for their upkeep is once a month per individual.
So monthly they get 20,000 naira?
That's correct.
So how many schools right now have received school fees for students?
So the latest figures that we have for schools that have received is 150.
Okay.
So 150 publicly owned institutions at tertiary level, universities, polytechnics and colleges of education have received disbursements directly from NELFUND to them, to their own
150?
accounts. 150 institutions, yes.
So it's only for public institutions, not even private institutions?
No, the law doesn't allow us to give loans for private institutions. I'm very aware that His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has indicated that he would like at some point in the future to capture all Nigerians. However, at the moment, the law that was passed by the National Assembly only allows us to pay to give loans against institutions that are owned both by the national and the subnational, so the federal government and state institutions.
So when it comes to loans now, we see that a lot of Nigerians do not like to collect loans for anything, but they just collect it when they're in dire situations. Have there been any challenges so far that has been posed NELFUND in this regard?
Well, I think, where people can afford to pay for something themselves, well, why take a loan?
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that people should bullishly go and take loans is not one that we necessarily subscribe to. But when you're taking loans, it also matters what you're taking the loan for.
Okay.
When you're taking a loan for education, there is really no law of diminishing return. The education stays with you. You use the education to better your own earning capacity, your own employability. And of course, another overriding factor is, and I think this is what was driving His Excellency in focusing on this so much, is the ability to sort of make Nigeria more competitive as a nation in terms of its educational base and its outputs.
Talking about payments now, what is the span of payments? When should people that have gotten this loan start repaying the loan to the government?
Okay, so I can tell you essentially when there is an obligation to pay the loans back, but I will also tell you make some other points around that. The obligation to start repaying the loan does not commence until 2 years after National Youth Service Corps.
Okay.
So students go to institutions, they study, they pass, they get their certificates, then they go and do their 1 year mandatory NYSC. 2 years after completion of that, then there is a requirement for the loans to be paid back. But the requirement to pay the loan back is on the employer for those who have managed to secure jobs. The employer goes to a database, he checks the name and the NIN number of the person who they're about to employ, and then essentially what happens then is they contact NELFUND and say, we're about to employ this person and we're going to start making deductions from their salary to the NELFUND. That process, or the deductions, are 10% of that individual's salary. At no point is the obligation on the individual to pay back themselves, unless of course they're self-employed,
okay,
in which case they're paying themselves the salary, so they need to make the remittance. But for the majority of people, we believe that they will be in employment, and the onus is on the employer to make a 10% deduction and give it back to the fund so that we can fund those who are coming through the system, the younger ones, if you like, or the newer ones.
This is a stopgap measure to ensure that people do not default on their payments.
Well, it is a loan, and default is an entirely different discussion.
Yeah.
But this is about ensuring that this individual who wants to take the student loan doesn't feel constrained, doesn't feel pressured, doesn't feel hampered by the fact that, or the fallacy, if you like, that somebody is going to come after them for it, because it's a fallacy. We will actually be, or the law actually says that we should tackle the employer and ensure that the employer is the one that's obliged to pay the loan back.
Okay, so I would have asked about the fact that if someone does not have a job after 2 years, but we don't have time at this point.
Very quickly, just to add a point there, if they don't have a job, they don't pay.
Okay, quick one. Thank you very much, Mr. Akintunde, for talking to us on this development.
Thank you for having me on your show, Theophilus.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.